Welcome to Mediascape, Insights from Digital Changemakers, a speaker series and podcast brought to you by USC Annenberg's Digital Media Management program. Join us as we unlock the secrets to success in an increasingly digital world. Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Mediascape, Insights and Conversations with Digital Changemakers. We're very blessed today to be joined by a good friend and colleague, Allan Knight, who is here with us with my co-host, Annika Jackson. And we're going to be talking about some things that resonate very close to our hearts and close to the essence of what our program is about. We teach a whole host and spectrum of skills related to media, marketing, audience analysis, data, DEI. But for us, at the very core of it, what we hope for every student who comes to our program is that they really take a deep look inside their lives, themselves, their hearts, to discover what their professional identity is and how that should be woven together with their personal identities so that they can lead the best life that they can, both at work and at home, and have it all come together. So we're really excited to have this conversation with Allan and to find out what insights he can share with us. Allan, welcome.
Thank you, Joseph, and thank you, Annika. It's a pleasure to be here.
We originally met, Allan, because the idea of branding and branding yourself and how you portray who you are and your values was something that we, as Joseph said, we teach as we teach it under the construct, right? We're not just teaching students skills in digital media, we're also teaching the emotional intelligence that has to come with it. And that's where you and I connected because I saw your 9-step process. So I want to get into you as a student before we get into the 9-step process and have you share your journey, because I think this is something that will resonate really strongly. But the whole essence is that you're really helping people become masters of themselves and go through a process not too dissimilar from what we try to instill in our students. So will you take us back to your early college years, what that looked like for you, your quests and questions?
Sure can. I'll keep it quite brief. When I was 13, my mother was diagnosed with cancer and told she had 6 months to live. And she lived for about 15 years. And so I consider that my mother was my kind of role model for the power of the human spirit. I quickly saw that something resonated in me that realized that no matter what we embark on in life, no matter how exciting, whatever vision we have for ourselves, at the end of the day, it's going to require us to communicate with other people. And I realized quite soon that communication starts first with communicating with yourself. And if we don't go down to that level, then everything is going to be out there. And then we wonder why most people are in dysfunctional relationships, or most people can't achieve some of the career dreams that they've had or life dreams that they've had. Because at the end of the day, the emotional, psychological, I call it turbulence, holds us back from communicating with power. So at a very young age, when I was 19, my father died, and I was in the middle of taking a bachelor in psychology, and I was kind of knew that I wanted to do some cool things in the world, but I was confused. So I took a year off, traveled the world, went country to country, city to city. And my attitude was, whoa, that's really interesting. Is that all there is? It was always, is that all there is? There was, later I realized, a spiritual emptiness in me. And when I returned to Montreal, where I currently live, it's my hometown, I met two people who were living at what was called a Zen meditation center. And their eyes were very calm and clear. And they invited me there. And there were 40 of them with their calm, clear, centered eyes. And I said, I want that. And I moved in and lived like a Zen monk for 9 years until I missed women too much. And then I left the monastery. When I left living as a Zen monk, I realized two main things. I realized that I achieved my goal. My goal was to meditate and become so-called enlightened. That's a whole other story. But I realized that I learned by living intensively in that way. I realized, first of all, most people don't need to be monks or nuns to achieve a deep level of inner peace. And I also learned that it had to go far beyond learning how to get what I call in the Zen zone. You have to integrate it into daily life. We don't live in caves, and even if we do live in caves, we still ultimately have to get out in the world and deal with people. So that led me to getting a master's degree in counseling psychology, and my thesis was the quality of relationships with others is founded on the quality of relationship with yourself. And then I realized I kind of drew these circles for myself, is that there was I as a person, there was my one-to-one relationships, then there were group and family, then, the community at large, and society as a global entity. And at the end of the day, I looked around and I thought to myself, isn't it amazing? We've become so advanced in our technology. And when I asked myself, how many relationships, how many couples, for example, have I known over my lifetime that I could look, they walk in a room and get to know them. And I say, wow, what an amazing relationship they have. I want that. And at the end of the day, I don't know, even to this day, I can't say that I know a lot of couples or relationships that really inspire. Of course, there are a lot, but I just wasn't meeting them. And what I was seeing was a lot of dysfunction. And that led me to realizing that I wanted to create a program, because I had started to take all these courses and rah-rah seminars and life coaching, and I'm not criticizing one of them. I benefited from all of them. But at the end of the day, I started to meet people when I started my coaching practice, and I started to meet people and I say, okay, before we go on, I can absolutely help you communicate more effectively in your business and personal life, but I need to get an idea of where you're at right now. And so I always start every session with an assessment, and I would help them to rate themselves 0 to 100% on about 30 categories. And at the end of the day, many of them had admitted to me that they have done tons of work on self-development, have spent $5,000, $10,000, sometimes $20,000, $25,000 on self-development. Yet when we did the assessment, many of them still procrastinated, still had a hyperactive mind, still lacking mental toughness, focus, self-confidence, and social anxiety, and the list goes on and on. So I thought something is wrong here. They've taken all these courses, they've spent all this money. I realized the light bulb finally went on. I realized that if you were a physical fitness trainer and I was 100 pounds overweight and terrible shape, you probably wouldn't have me go to rah-rah seminars or read a lot of books. You get me on a program. And if I did that 4 or 5 times a week, in 3, 4, or 5 months, I'd be in pretty good shape. And I realized that if that's true for physical fitness, it's probably true for inner fitness and verbal fitness. And I always wanted to combine them both. So that led me to developing the program that I'm currently working on. I've been working at helping people through this for many, many years, one-to-one and in groups. And now we're, of course, scaling the business, and Annika knows all about that. So in a nutshell, I hope that answers your question of giving you a context of where I'm actually coming from.
That's awesome context, Allan. And with this, I can't help but think about the Socrates quote and philosophical maxim, which was inscribed upon the temple of Apollo, which is, know thyself. I know that you know those words well, and that seems like it's the foundation of what you're talking about. I wanted to ask you a question because I couldn't help but notice that it seems like some of these amazing ideas that you've developed came out of and in response to your own trauma in your life. I found that so many things that seem like weaknesses can actually have a corresponding superpower, for lack of a better word, but that sometimes it really comes from this pain that we've experienced earlier on in our lives. And we encourage our students to really pay close attention to that, because there's the flip side of the coin can be something very powerful. Do you agree or have your own thoughts about that?
You are so right on. And that's one of the reasons whenever I'm giving advice or helping people in whatever ways I can, what motivated me to develop my program was that it bothered me to some degree, even though that I was exposed to a lot of great speakers and trainers and motivators. There was such an emphasis on law of attraction, positive thinking, all of which are very important, all of which I teach in part of my program. But that's only part of it. The thing that I've learned over the years, and that's why when Annika referred to self-mastery, I'm less interested in focusing so much on positive thinking, but more on how do we deal with the challenges and obstacles that we're going to experience in our lives? Because that's the true test. I could go and do affirmations till I'm blue in the face, but unless I take it, and I call it my 6th step of the 9 steps, the 6th step is dealing with the Scud missiles of life, I call it, the challenges, the obstacles, because it's there where we actually experience true self-mastery and the ability to experience these difficulties and then ask ourselves, how are we going to respond to it? Are we going to become a victim of those things, or are we going to learn to navigate them and overcome them as quickly as possible and get back on track in the superhighway of life? So again, that's why I'm not here to promote my 9-step program, but that's why I wanted to connect 1 to 9 in a logical way, where 3, 4, and 5, you're building your personal power. And then in 6, you're more effective at dealing with the challenges that you're talking about, Joseph. But the challenges, to me, number 6 is the most interesting, because when I see people get to that level, that's when I know their life is going to be much more effortless and more magical.
Allan, can you talk to us a little bit about the process? Because obviously as communications folks, people who are in media, we are all about connecting, whether it's connecting brands with consumers, connecting with audiences, and every step of your process has the word connect in it. So will you share a little bit about that, why it's so important to continue coming back to this idea of connection and communication, and talk us through the process a little bit?
Yeah, I love the word connecting, because at the end of the day, I ask myself, why am I human? What's the purpose of my life? What's the purpose of being a human being? And I've come to see it a certain way. I see this as an educational training program. Life is being a human being is a training program, and we're here to learn and grow. And I heal and grow every day, and I'll never stop. And so when I looked around me, I thought, what is the main issue in the world? And I thought about the fact that when I look at the news and I see one of the number 1 issues in the world right now is loneliness. Isn't that interesting? Loneliness, after all the development of technology and our development of, where we're at as a world online. And yet many people are still lonely. And then another one is depression. And so they're intimately connected. And I realized that's why when I was in my master's in education, I said, if I can help people communicate with more effectiveness and more confidence and more passion and more love and more wisdom, it would be great, both in there, because for us to grow and live our dream, we need to develop our business relationships and our personal relationships. So number 8 is all about mastering your communication, but the first 7 have to do with accepting, loving, and respecting yourself like your own child. And if you could learn to live that way, connect with you in an effective way, then you're ultimately it's gonna have a ripple effect. If I'm a walking love machine without a lot of psychological, emotional problems, I don't have to be controlling, I don't have to be manipulative, I don't have to be too timid and shy. I could just enjoy my day, loving and receiving love till I die in this lifetime. So to me, it's all about connecting, and I just like that word. So I use the word connect with yourself, connect with your past, connect with your vision, connect with your inner power, and so on.
Quick follow-up on that, Allan. I read the Dalai Lama's book, The Art of Happiness, some years ago. And when they asked him, how do you achieve happiness? He said that it's the quality and the nature of your personal relationships are the truest indicator of your happiness.
Right. It's right. The Dalai Lama, I love, because when I was living as a Zen monk, we also had a very strong affinity to Tibetan Buddhism and Dalai Lama, and I met many of the lamas myself. But yes, this is true. But the reason that I got motivated when I left living as a monk, I realized that as much respect and honor and love and admiration I have for people who live in Tibet and India and the East, if I was going to help people in the Western culture where we live, I wanted to create a language that a lot of us could understand, and it will go beyond just coming up with generic concepts like you need to love yourself or you need to have great relationships. have a lot of compassion. That's wonderful. Then the question is, how do you do that? How do you do that? Like you mentioned before, Joseph, about who did you, Socrates, what did you say again?
Socrates, know thyself.
Yeah, know thyself. So know thyself. Again, I realized quite quickly, everything starts with awareness. That's why I went to be a monk. That's why I read some books. That's why I attended seminars. I wanted to become more aware. But I then realized later that unless I take that awareness and take it into a strong emotional commitment, I get fed up with mediocrity and I really want to grow. And unless I take that emotional commitment into consistent action, a lot of people procrastinate, don't take action. And unless you take those three into effective communication, all four are part of the cylinders in the engine of the car. But what the problem with a lot of us and including me in the early years, is we focus on the quick fix. Let's go get another idea, read another book, go to another seminar. All good. But that by itself is trying to take the easy path of just thinking that knowledge is going to do it. And knowledge is kind of interesting. When it comes to you and I wanted to be a doctor, knowledge is power. And everyone says knowledge is power. Knowledge is power in certain circumstances. But I think when it comes to self-mastery and communication mastery, it's the opposite. The heart is power. Intuition is power. Presence of mind is power. Compassion, power. And of course, knowledge is icing on the cake and also important. I hope I didn't go on too long with that answer.
No, but can you walk us through exactly what the 9 steps are? Even just the names of them and a couple of quick sentences, perhaps, and how they build upon each other?
Sure. So step number 1 is connecting with your present current condition. I always like to start off by saying, look, one of the benefits of the program is that it's really geared for people who might be quite self-aware already. They've learned a lot of cool things, but they now want to take it into practice and transform themselves finally. So the 9 steps kind of speeds up the process. So step 1 is that's where the assessment is. Let's stop, look and listen. Let's look in the mirror. Let's identify what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are. So that's step number 1, easy peasy. I have my clients every month do it again, so you see your scores increase. Number 2, and by the way, stop me anytime if you need any clarification. Step number 2 is connecting with your past. It became clear to me, and I'm sure it's clear to you guys as well, is that what keeps us back is some things and habits and patterns that came from our past. So in step number 2, there's 2A, 2B. 2A, I'll ask people, do you have anyone that you know from your past or present that you still hold grudges or resentment or anger toward? And if they do, we teach them a power healing process to let a lot of that go. And then even if they forgive everyone from their past, 2B is all about, are you still too hard on yourself and too self-critical? Because even if you're forgiven everybody from your past, most people are way too self-critical and too hard on themselves. So number 2 is we release some of that and feel a sense of relief. Number 3, now we need to replace that negativity with positivity. So 4 is connecting with your vision. You're the expert on much more than I am. Connecting with your purpose, your vision, your direction, where you want to go in life, who you are. And so we take them through a visioning process that's very powerful and fun. So step number 1, 2, 3, easy peasy. Within a couple of weeks, it's done. You can always go back to it to refine it. Now, 4, 5, and 6 are more difficult.
I just want to make sure I totally understand this. So the first one you said is really connect and claim your strengths and weaknesses?
Identify your strengths and weaknesses by doing this assessment.
Identify strengths and weaknesses. Then number 2 is connecting to your past.
Right. So you learn to let go of some of the emotional, psychological patterns, habits that are keeping you from moving ahead. You want to release some of them, just like the infections. You want to get the infection out of your body.
Got it. And then number 3, you replace that pain with more positive feelings and ideas.
Well, in the way that I have a good friend who said, Allan, I've forgiven 5 times over the last 20 years. I said, well, that's why I have a 9-step program. It's not a 2-step program. Because if you learn to forgive others, but are not replacing that negative energy, toxicity, with the positive nutrients, then the cancer can come back. You're not developing the strength that you need. That's why you got to go up the ladder to build the inner strength. So number 3 is connecting with your vision, because it's important that if we're going to go places, we know who we are and what we want to achieve and where we go. So that's when I help people to go through some processes that they have an attitude, nothing is going to stop me from living my desired lifestyle. So 1, 2, and 3 within a couple of weeks, it's pretty well done. Then we go through the more difficult part. 4 is what we call connecting to your inner power. 4 and 6 are probably the two most important points or areas. Number 4 is we need to build up those inner muscles, the mind, the rational mind, the emotional mind, and let's call it the Zen zone. So those 3, I have exercise to teach people how to transform negative thinking into positive thinking, how to channel emotions from stress, anxiety, fear, depression, sadness, whatever it be, into enthusiasm, passion, and love, and so on, and how to tap in to the Zen zone. The Zen zone is that big, calm, clear mind that should be running the show. So by working on the inner person, and I'm feeling better, I'm thinking better, I'm feeling better, I'm tapping into a deep level of contentment. Now I have the foundation to go to 5, which is connect with your actions. And that's where we teach people accountability, time management, organizational skills, some simple techniques that now build their lifestyle out. So 4 is inner power and 5 is outer power. That gets us to number 6. Now we're doing all of the steps all of the time. We're just talking about in the program, we're focusing on one at a time to work up the ladder. As we get to 6, which is my favorite, now we're able to identify the challenges that come into our life. Some are small, some are medium, some are large. If it's sunny outside and I expect to play baseball this afternoon and I walk outside and it's pouring rain, that's a small obstacle. If I lose $5,000, maybe it's a medium obstacle. If I have a friend who has 4-stage cancer, that's a major Scud missile. So whether it's small, medium, or large, what we teach is self-mastery techniques, which go like this, that if I get triggered, because we're all going to be triggered sooner or later, some are small, some are medium, some are large, then I teach people how to feel them, how to navigate and transform the emotion as quickly as possible, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, and get back in the Zen zone. That's why in the Eastern tradition, they have what's called a Daruma doll. So the doll, you could go like this, and it comes back like this. Rest like this, comes back. You've probably seen that. That's the enlightened stage. And the world stimulates us. We get triggered. We get off track in relationship. I have one of my recent clients. She feels great most of the time, but some of the people in her life trigger her. And so that's why she needs to go through each trigger, and she's not confident and assertive enough. So now we've got her going through the letting go process, and we're going to replace it with inner fitness exercises to get strong on a level of inner fitness. So 4 is inner fitness, 5 is action fitness, and 6 is dealing with the Scud missiles of life. And at that level, you're more and more pretty damn well. And number 7 is connecting with your true manifestation, your ability to manifest. Number 7 is all about manifesting what you want in life, the true power of manifesting. Now we could teach people more advanced motivational techniques to deal with some of the more subtle areas internally. Like I remember in my case, I thought I was doing so well and so confident, and this was going. And I walked down the streets of Vancouver, and I noticed 20 minutes of my walk, every person I'm seeing, I'm criticizing, judging how they look, how they dress. And I thought, big shot Allan, who's so-called motivational coach. And then I realized I needed to teach myself some more advanced, subtle techniques to get into a higher level of unconditionally loving others. So 1 to 7 is all about empowering you. It's all about accepting and loving and respecting you like your own children. Those are the 7 foundational steps. Step 8, now we could really have fun with our communication skills. Because if we're going to be an entrepreneur, guess what? We still have to meet people. We still have to listen. How present are we listening? We still need to communicate with clarity, have enthusiasm, have confidence, understand different personality types, how to navigate conflict. All these communication skills on a business level, parenting, an entrepreneurship, finding your soulmate. All of it's founded on the 7 steps are related to all these target audiences. And in number 8, we adapt them according to personal relationships or business relationships, and in some case, sports performance. And 9 is that once you learn how to feel better and better and better about yourself, and now that you feel better and better and better about your relationship, naturally, you just want to help people. You want to make a difference in the world. So we just talk about connecting to your legacy, where we teach you mastermind groups to support each other in achieving the ability to help as many people in the world as we can. Those are the 9 steps.
I love it. Legacy is something that's very important to Annika and I. And we interviewed somebody on this show who's a professor, and we asked her about that. And she had a wonderful definition. She said, legacy is what's there when you're not.
That's cool. That's really cool. I mean, that's where I'm at now. I'm not 21, I'm not 41. And that's why when I connected to Annika, I said, one of the things is, my ego's not that big now. All I care is just about scaling what I have, get it out there, have as many certified coaches as possible, and translate everything. And when I'm gone, I won't call it Starbucks in the sky, but when I'm gone to Starbucks in the sky, I'll feel great. And then being that I believe in reincarnation, I'll be back to see you guys sometime soon.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you. My personal philosophy of life, and I teach this to the students also, is that life is a potluck. You got to develop your own special thing, your own special dish, and then you show up to that potluck and you share it with anybody else who wants it, and they share theirs with you, and pretty soon you got a pretty delicious plate that's just full of everyone's best things, and it all happened because we were sharing. I want to ask you a question, if I could, as we think about how to relate this back now to business. We talk a lot about how when you start a business, and you're an entrepreneur, Annika's an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur, that when you start a business in the beginning, it's just you. It's just you. And you have the opportunity to take your essence, to take your skills, superpowers, etc., and infuse this new business with the things that really matter to you. So, and in my pitching that I've done when I'm pitching to, whether it's an investor or a new partner or customer, I have to pitch not just the idea, but I have to pitch it with heart and mission that makes people understand, like, hey, this is bigger than just a product. It's definitely bigger than me or the person who's pitching. This is something that has, real potential to go and make a difference. So can you talk a little bit about, on the business side, because I know you've worked with so many entrepreneurs and professionals, about how to take some of these ideas and infuse them, and how important it is to infuse them into that business journey and that business story as well.
Oh, okay. Well, then I should have mentioned, in the over 30 years of me doing what I do, 90% of the people I trained were entrepreneurs. And the best way I could explain it is that at the end of the day, we could have the most incredible idea. We could even have the most incredible branding. We talked about that, Annika, that what we do kind of complements each other. We need to brand ourselves. We need to market ourselves. We probably need to get much more savvy in social media. We might have the greatest product in the world. But the way I applied, and I'll give you a tangible examples. I've trained and coached a lot of financial advisors, realtors, people in home-based business. And when I meet them, and I say, okay, let's role play a little bit. You've been in the business for 5 or 10 years. A lot of them were financial advisors. I said, okay, pretend we just met for the first time. Tell me how we would connect and how you would present yourself when we go back and chat a bit. And so inevitably, I do a lot of role playing like that in my programs. And inevitably, most of these people have been around for 5 or 10 years in their business, so-called training that they get. And 90% of the people that I'd asked to role play with me could hardly articulate in, I would call it, clear, concise, button-touching way with me. And I think, what are they learning? Because a lot of that was just jargon that they repeated. when I first taught sales, I started to do sales training, and I realized although I was helping people, 80% of them, the problem was not the sales or the product or service they were selling. It was coming from inside themselves. So to answer your question, how do you apply it? If I first and foremost tap into my inner power and I feel great, I feel present, I feel motivated, I feel determined, now that has a ripple effect on my communication skills. So if you're a financial advisor and saying, okay, let's work on your first phone call over the phone or over Zoom call. Now we're going to role play. Then I say to them, okay, here are different ways you can introduce yourself. You could chit chat, and then you could say, by the way, before we go on, here are a couple of questions I have for you that 80% of it oozes out from your enthusiasm, your intuition, and your wisdom. So it impacts all your communication, whether it's business or personal. So a lot of it is going to come intuitively the way I'm speaking to you now to answer your question. It's oozing out of me. It's just coming mainly from the inside. And fortunately, I'm not the way I was when I was 19, when I was timid, insecure, social anxiety. I'd walk up to her and go, you wouldn't want to dance with me, would you? And then she says, no. And I walk away and I beat myself up. Never again will I do that. Sales is like that. So when you work on your inner power, then it's easy peasy to come up with creative questions because your ego's not so much in the way. So whether it's as a leader or whether you have a sales team or whether you're trying to sell and you're out networking, when I started to take networking seriously, I realized that my old ways of doing it, I'd go into a networking event at a trade show and I'd talk to a few people that I knew because it was safe. Then I said, screw this. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to meet 20 new people. And I walked in there and start practicing my skills. And so the combination of the inner power and then 8, which is about public speaking, networking, selling, managing, all kinds of connecting, it's very easy to add into the mix the content that you need to make the communications very powerful. So it's very, very relevant to the entrepreneurial world and even the corporate world.
You made so many great points. And I think one of the biggest is that all communication is sales, right? And no matter where you are in your business or planning or capstone project, you need to know how to present yourself effectively, how to come in with confidence, and how to show that you really understand your product, your audience, and you have that passion that you talked about. So, Allan, I know that you've been operating under, Zen Zone, Zen Zone Mastery. Now you're in a rebrand to Zen Activation Program because it's not really just about Zen. It's about how you activate and implement, right? So I think we just want to thank you so much for being here and for sharing your enthusiasm and your journey, and encourage people perhaps to check out Zen Activation Program website or on social media. And thank you to everybody who's watching or listening. We really have enjoyed this time, like we do every conversation. There's so many counterpoints and things that three of us are really connected on, and we think our audience will find that too.
So thank you for that, and thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to meet you. And Joseph, great meeting you as well. And I hope this is the beginning of many other conversations. I'll leave you with this, is that aside from all the things we talk about at the very core, and one of the reasons I like the name Zen Activation Program, is that the core behind everything is actually nonverbal. And the word vibe comes up to me. I live in a very new 55 plus community. It's an incredible place where I'm very fortunate to live. And the manager of it, we had a barbecue last week, and she came over to me and she said, Allan, I can't tell you, if everybody in this place was like you, I'd be a happy woman. And I was taken aback. I felt honored that she said that to me. I said, what are you talking about? She says, your energy, you got that vibe. Got that vibe. You guys too young to remember the great personality, Dean Martin? So Dean Martin has taught me more than any motivator will teach me. And I challenge, even if you're young, 19 years old, Go look at Dean Martin running down the steps. This variety show where 50 million people were watching. And I did it in front of a church group, 300 people, and I put the video on, and I looked up, and everyone was smiling. Not because he's smart. He wasn't that smart. But he had passion and joy that oozed out of him. And when you had that oozing spirit, like Annika's smile, and yours too, Joseph, and then you add in some elements of communication, life becomes great. So thank you again for having me, and look forward to our next chat.
Thank you so much, Allan. Appreciate it. Yeah. Everybody go, please check out AllanKnight.com, which is ALLANKNIGHT.com, to learn more about all the great things that Allan is doing. Allan, thank you very much for sharing your time and most of all your wisdom and your vibe with us today. To learn more about the Master of Science in Digital Media Management program, visit us on the web at dmm.usc.edu.